Philippines now. Stocks may rise again after surging yesterday on
And another big mover today, the Philippine peso gaining for a fifth bid day.
2010 was a good year for the Philippines. Despite the challenging global economic environment, the country sustained strong levels of growth, the strongest since 1976. The year 2010 also marked the beginning. With a new leadership in place, there is a new way of doing business in the Philippines. Under new management, good governance and a more level playing field are the new priorities. A change for the better. The focus is on transparency and reforming policies to provide longer-term solution to poverty.
The goal of President Aquino is to create a new future for our country, for our people. Create a future where there will be less poverty, where everyone will have equal opportunity, where transactions are done in daylight rather than in backroom deals and midnight transactions.
Rapid, sustainable, broad-based economic growth is the new agenda. The new economic managers are tasked to build on the resilience of the Philippine economy and lead the country's advance towards a faster, sustainable growth trajectory. In 2010, the Philippine economy grew 7.3%, the highest in 34 years, signaling that the country is on a path of strong recovery.
We actually did quite well for several reasons. Among others, the continued inflow of Filipino workers abroad. Second, also the increased confidence brought about by the coming of a new government.
Growth was broad-based, led by services, consumption, industry, and investments. GDP growth was also boosted by the strong recovery of exports. Economic indicators all point in the right direction.
We saw the ideal convergence of rapid growth and low inflation in 2010. And I would say that part of the reason for this was well-calibrated policies, including monetary policy, which resulted in the inflation rate remaining at below the midpoint of the inflation target for the year. In fact, the average inflation rate for 2010 was 3.8%.
Domestic interest rates remained supportive of growth. In November last year, Standard & Poor's upgraded the country's sovereign ratings. Moody's also recently changed the country's credit outlook to positive, signaling a possible rating upgrade in the coming months.
We also made sure that there was ample liquidity in the financial system. And this allowed credit to continue to flow to the various productive sectors and for the economy to grow as a result.
The sound and stable banking system fueled economic expansion and remained the primary source of credit for the economy. Bank deposits, lending, and profitability posted healthy growth rates throughout the year, even during the time when many of the world's biggest economies and biggest banks were reeling from the global crisis.
The banks also exhibited improved profitability. In fact, it was probably 2010 was probably one of the best years for the Philippine banks.
Filipinos are earning more foreign exchange, boosting our external payments position and enabling the country to cope with external shocks.
We saw the BOP register an unprecedented surplus of over $14 billion during the year. This allowed us to build up our gross international reserves to an all-time high of $62.4 billion. This is equivalent to about 10 months of imports of goods and services. So overall, the external liquidity position of the economy continued to be quite favorable.
The sound external position supported the exchange rate. the peso remained competitive compared to its neighbors in the region. Our government also paid good attention to the bellwether issues which are key creditor and investor concerns.
It has also gone on a campaign of increased governance and its anti-corruption efforts. This is again part of this overall change in economic environment.
A clear political commitment to ensure fiscal sustainability. The challenge ahead is to intensify revenue collections and keep spending within manageable levels.
Customs was, I think, up 17% against last year, and BIR was up 9% against last year. On average, both were up 11% on a combined basis. And we've proven all those pessimistic analysts wrong. We're going to be well within the 325 billion that we set as the ceiling for the budget in 2010. And we did this with a multi-dimensional approach to fiscal consolidation. On our efforts to improve our revenue, we're focusing right now on administrative efficiency improvement by increasing the risk perception of all the players. 2, by changing the processes. 3, by investing in information technology. 4, by using information to drive performance. And we're going to implement this over a period of time.
One of the first things that the President instructed us to do is to adopt a zero-based budgeting approach to the budget process. And that meant, we had to evaluate each budget item. So we were able to cover about 60% of the major items in the budget, and that helped us a lot in terms of, culling from the many items in the budget, which were, going to be continued, which were going to be scaled down, and which are going to be expanded.
The economic managers are making sure that the taxpayers' money are being used wisely, prudently.
Second instruction of the President was to make sure that we translate into pesos and centavos what he calls his social contract with the Filipino people.
The focus on revenue generation and prudent expenditure management is complemented by proactive debt management to ensure fiscal sustainability in the medium term. The country's debt profile has improved, while financing costs have declined. The national government's debt-to-GDP ratio has declined from a high of 78% in 2004 to a more manageable level of 56% in 2010. The robust economic growth and the positive developments on the monetary, external, and financial fronts did not go unnoticed. There is no doubt that the Philippines' ability to pay its debt is improving. The Republic clearly is a much stronger credit today. The Philippines' strong economic performance last year and the resilience displayed during the global financial crisis are the best proof that the Philippines is moving to better times.
2011 would be a year that will show sustained rapid economic growth and relatively low inflation. This would allow the Bangko Sentral also to maintain relatively low interest rates during the year. As a result of that, we see credit continuing to move within the economy.
The target is 7 to 8% over the medium term per annum. The growth drivers would come essentially from several industries. Among others, there would be business process outsourcing, which is already growing at rather high growth rates. Tourism will also be emphasized. Then we will work on agro-industrial processing, which we think will benefit because of the infrastructure investments. There will be both growth in agriculture as well as in industries that are designed to process agricultural products.
The electronics sector accounts for about 60% of total Philippine exports, merchandise exports. Now, the other export that we're growing very fast is really the service exports, led by the BPO call center industry. And right now, the service exports is already about close to 20% of total Philippine exports. We're also looking at engineered bamboo. We're also looking now at the revival of the garments industry to further fuel the growth in exports.
We see a further build-up in gross international reserves, but we'll make sure that this build-up is orderly and that the movement in the exchange rate of the peso will be more or less, again, in the middle of the range of the movement of Asian currencies.
It has come to a point where we probably have the resources that we need in order to make a breakthrough. Together with the judicious use of these resources, continued focusing as far as activities are concerned, as well as comprehensive planning and implementation, that we will be able to put it all together and move to a growth path that is higher than where we are now.
The biggest chunk of the budget is going to go to social services. 34.1% of the budget is going to go to social services to promote greater transparency. We are for the first time going to engage civil society organizations, business groups, and the media in the 6 biggest departments and the 3 biggest GOCCs. There is going to be an experiment in consultation and participatory budget process. We will also start this semester what we call the government bidding, electronic bidding process, and that way we can be sure that more and more the bidding will be fair, objective, and transparent. We will be able to come up with a sustainable platform so that over the long haul, the revenue to GDP collection of the Philippines will be at par, if not better, than our peer countries. Our goal is to have a tax revenue effort of at least 17% by the end of President Aquino's term, and a revenue to GDP number of above 20%. So our goal is to reduce our deficit to 2% of GDP by 2013 and maintain it for the rest of the term of President Aquino. Having it at 2%, so long as our growth continues, will allow us to reduce our debt to GDP to below 50% by the end of the term of President Aquino.
We are looking at public-private partnerships and business environment reforms to attract investments.
One is to address the competitiveness. So we have to address this by promoting a better business environment. We will really try our best to make our procedures shorter and very efficient, and that we will make the rules so that everybody has a fair chance of getting the business.
We were able to relaunch our PPP program, focusing now on solicited projects. Approvals will be within 6 months. Guarantee of contractual implementation of contractual provision. We were also able to come up with a pipeline of projects that's very important in attracting serious investors.
The country's prospects are promising this 2011 and the years to come. From a consumption-led nation, the economy is now in a sweet spot where the economy can move towards faster, investment-led growth.
We're here now to make things happen, and we realize that our role really is to just facilitate things for the private sector, to create an environment for them that's predictable, that's stable, that wherever they can make sure that their investments will be protected. And the important thing is that they trust us, and they trust government, and that's the only way we're going to attract investments. In the past, our growth has been mainly through consumption. It's very important that we activate the investment part of the growth equation, and that's going to be important in bringing up the growth path to a higher level, and that's key to reducing